So here again, we're at where I'm at in my account of what happened at Camp Trans 2010. Wednesday, after the meeting, Wednesday afternoon, in planning for the action, I got together with three other trans women, all trans-identified women, and started working on what we would say if we were, the ones, we were all willing to take the stage and, do whatever it took. We weren't afraid of being subdued or put down or whatever. We knew that might be a possibility. All of us were conscious of that and aware of that, and weren't, would be able to handle that. So they had already had a statement written, and I read it, and it was short, and I felt like the language in it was overly aggressive. I don't actually have a copy of that statement, but I do have a copy of the statement we wrote that night. Shit. There it is. So, sorry if I keep this in. I wanted to change the language of the statement. Oops. I wanted to change the language of the statement. But, the rest of the women who were deciding on this didn't think so. They thought that it should be, it seemed like they wanted the language of whatever we said to be confrontational. I didn't like that idea. Still don't like that idea. I would have heavily edited the statement, but not many people got the chance to read it. Anyway, so we basically came to kind of an agreement on what it would be and what it would say. Even though I wasn't entirely happy with it, it was what it was, and I managed to clean it up a little bit and get it more directed. I mean, that was my concern, was that parts of it were too vague, and then parts of it were just outwardly hostile. And if you're going to be outwardly hostile, people should know why. So I heard a trans woman call for an all trans female caucus a little bit later, maybe not much later, that evening. And they called everyone that was, on the trans female spectrum. And they called 15 minutes beforehand, and I went, called again, and I counted at the most that were there 10 people who were identified as trans women, somewhere on the trans female spectrum, or felt like they should be there. There were people absent. Some people who I know are trans women were not there at camp to be at the meeting. I had to leave, do other things. I don't know why. Why they weren't there isn't really relevant, I guess. But if you're not present, it's tough to include you in any kind of decision making. Not that I'm against it, which is why, as we got to talk to some of the trans women that weren't at the meeting, we made sure to make our way around camp and talk to the ones that didn't come. And no, not all of them were in agreement about what was said, and we came up with a statement in a caucus to be read to the rest of camp. I actually have it right here, because I read it. And I volunteered to read it out of the group, out of all the women that were at the caucus. None of them wanted to. But they all felt like it needed to be said. And so I was in agreement with that, and I was in agreement with what was produced. And what we basically wanted to tell everyone was that we didn't think that the mission statement of Camp Trans was reflective of the space that Camp Trans was, which Camp Trans is just pretty much a trans-centric space for, you know, anyone on the spectrum, regardless of how you identify, to have a safe space and to have a place to, you know, be together and establish a community. But, you know, the goal was to get trans women into Mishfest. And as the planning of whatever action went down, and as people realized that that just wasn't the goal of most of the people who came anymore, you know, there was a lot of sentiment during, you know, in the lead up to the action that, you know, well, screw Mishfest, and, you know, they don't deserve to be there, they don't deserve to exist, you know, there's a whole lot of burn the whole thing to the ground. And, you know, yeah, I even heard that start on Wednesday and shit, you know, like there were people that were saying that shit the whole time, just burn it to the ground. Which is not exactly, it's the complete opposite of what it says, that the mission statement, it's the complete opposite of the purpose of the camp. Hello. So yeah, it was kind of, you know, we kind of felt like the mission statement remained pretty disingenuous to what was actually happening at camp. And we said that basically in a mission statement. That it should be changed. And I could tell by the deafening silence that came right after I finished reading it, that, you know, we should have just walked away or something. And it becomes even harder to keep people anonymous in the story at this point. But someone else there, another trans woman who was at the caucus, added some of her feelings and how she felt. And how she felt about the gin she had attended for many years. I was one of the, you know, that was another good thing about me reading it was, and one of the reasons I agreed to read it was because it was my first year. And I was, you know, your typical example of a first year trans woman who came expecting one thing and found another thing. I mean, it's great. I mean, I have nothing, don't get me wrong, I have nothing against trans-centric spaces. I run one. Camp out. I run one. But I expected a trans woman-centric space, and it just was kind of all over the place. And I mean, not there's anything wrong with that. Again, that's great, but it's just not what I thought it was. Especially when most of the people either don't care or, you know, hate Mishfest, you know, or against it in principle. And, you know, from what I found out during the week and talking to people, a lot of people are like, you know, I don't know, maybe you shouldn't hate it, even though it's a, you know, prohibitively expensive event for a lot of women, just regular women who want to go, much less. I mean, yeah, it's not going to be easy to go. And but it's the question of, is that worthy of, you know, is that not a legitimate goal of setting up a good space for, you know, a good safe space for women? So, yeah, we read the statement, shit hit the fan, people just blew up, you know, people there in the community and at camp were just so diehard militant on dead set of being against Mishfest that, you know, just tensions just erupted, and after the meeting broke up that night, the whole camp was tense. And I'm probably running really close to my limit here, so I'll just continue with the story from there. Just a lot of crap going on, and then a lot of tension and people being fucked up to each other.